Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for making it to the second Think and Act TACT. Today we're going to be talking about something that affects everybody, that some people deny, that some people embrace with all of their hearts, something that doesn't quite have any pattern or trend, but that's the only common thing that runs through it is interest. Like they say, in politics, there are no permanent friends or enemies, only permanent interest. We'll be talking about the battle for the polls today. Interesting nuggets from political campaigns around the world. And our speakers today are Damilare Ogunleye. Alright, Damilare Ogunleye is a senior manager at Verdant Zeal. He comes from an engineering background and brings a lot of wealth of experience into the game of marketing. Our second facilitator today is TACT Okeowo. Let's put your hands together for him. AKA SlimT. SlimT is a man of many parts. First of all, someone who is into the preservation of the earth by supporting tree planting campaigns. He's also a musician. He has a few songs to his credit, and he's a manager at Verdant Zeal too, in charge of the Autobus studios. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'll hand you over to the gentlemen for this session. Thank you very much.
Everybody? Good morning, everybody. This morning our topic is battle for the polls, powerful nuggets from political campaigns around the world. Now, we'll just quickly make a caveat. The caveat is first that some people are older than my age and SlimT's age put together here. So the experiences we'll be sharing here might not be time bound. They might not be, and people might be able to bring experiences from 1960. So we'd also want to get those experiences. The other caveat also is the fact that we will not say we know it all. We're just sharing some insights based on what we've seen, what we've also read about. So we'd also add that at the time of interaction, powerful nuggets also come from this floor. Interestingly, we will see a lot of stories. So I'll start with a simple story. I remember reading an article and it talked about a young guy who was going to run for class captain in a very crim school. You know, class captains in crim schools are run based on political settings, so you campaign. And one guy went around doing the Machiavelli of, oh, if I was a class captain, I'll make sure teachers come to class on time. I'll make sure everybody comes and everybody. And his opponent just stood up at the time of pitching and he said, if you guys vote for me, I will buy lunch for everybody. And he won ultimately. So the learning is that there are also shifting cultures. There are things that drive politics. And we'll just be sharing some of those insights. I'll hand over to SlimT now to just flow into an intro. SlimT.
Praise the Lord. Sorry. That was actually on purpose because, I figured everybody was looking tense, so I needed a very perfect icebreaker. Normally when I hold the mic, I always say praise the Lord. Doesn't mean I'm a good person like that. So basically, I'm just going to, I understand that even though you have any vast knowledge about politics and whatnot, I believe that some of us too are also laymen that want to understand what we're trying to deliver today at a very easy level, easy mode. So I will try to be as simple as possible and let my colleague handle the delicate part. Now, what is political marketing? Political marketing, as far as I am concerned, to my own knowledge, is the marriage of two social sciences, whereby the political landscape is the most important factor. But we need to understand that between winning and losing, the most important factor that you need to understand in political marketing is the political landscape. Now, how do you define this? There are three methods. There are actually four, but the last one is invincible. Invincible, as I go on, you will understand what I'm saying. The first part is you first need a persuasive message. That is, you need a message whereby the instant it is being spoken, I can constantly relate to it, you can constantly relate to it, he can relate to it, despite the vast demographics. Do you understand? Then the second part is, what is your target audience? Who are the type of people are you targeting? Who are the larger percentage of voters that you know that if I send out this message, these people are more likely to vote for me? Do I connect to them on a grassroots level? And thirdly, is the plan. Now, most political campaigns around the world, the reason why most of them fail is that they usually do not have a persuasive message that you and I can both relate to. They most of the time do not understand their target audience, do not know who they are targeting. All they just usually have is money, you understand. They embark on these campaign and there is no direct target on who exactly they are trying to get to vote for them. And the third part is that there is no clear and concise plan on how to achieve their goals from inception to the day of election. Now, the last part that I said is invincible is if you can get all these three things right, that is your persuasive message, the target audience, and your plan, what makes the campaign very successful is if you can actualize all these three and repeat that process over and over and over and over and over again. Can somebody say amen, please? Thank you. So I know you guys are they're looking too serious. So I need, without much being said, I need to give one or two examples about political campaigns around the globe. The first one I would use, which yes is obviously cliche, is the 2008 Obama campaign. And he brought the issue of change because people were used to political leaders that usually come and say, oh, I am coming with experience, I have what it takes, I have been present in blah blah blah, I have been part of blah blah blah, and I have what it takes to deliver you to the promised land. Why Obama came with the message of change. With change, both you and I can change how things work in our present environment and take us out of this recession. And people who were going through the recession at that point in time needed something much more than experience for them to cast their vote. Because when you vote, you're voting on an intimate level. You understand? You are connecting with yourself and saying, okay, this person I'm going to vote for, is this person going to make my life easy, bearable, or is this person going to make my life a living hell? Now, secondly, the second example that I'd like to use to explain this further is the Colombian election that happened in 2010 between Marcus Greenwave and Juan Santos. Now, Marcus Greenwave was the type of person that was very popular amongst the young idealists, who also were the larger percentage of the people who used online social media in order to buttress their political ideas and beliefs. Now, Juan Santos, who was most likely the likely person to enter presidency, was scared of this person as his opposition. So what he decided to do was, in order to tackle this, he decided to come up with a 50-day plan from inception towards the day of election, and build up an 80-man team in a place called a war room. Now, this war room was supposed to challenge every tactic that Marcus Greenwave came up with, in order to win this election. Now, thirdly, without going too much further, I'd like to use myself as an example, because it would not be a layman's view if we cannot connect on my level. There was this campaign that I was running on, so to speak. It's called the Day Artist campaign. Now, what Day Artist is supposed to be is supposed to pick new artists and pick, okay, who has been doing well in this industry and how we can, nominate them and give them an award. And obviously, of all the four candidates, I was unknown because I was coming out for the first time. Now, what then happened was that a lot of these people automatically assumed me not to be a threat because I was unknown and nobody knew me. But the thing about why I won that campaign was because everyone could connect with me on a grassroots level. You understand? People saw me and say, oh, one of our own is going up there, so we need to do as much as possible to make sure that he wins. While the rest of the other candidates did not bother, you understand, looking for votes, looking for, oh, vote for me because I have done this. But I had to go grassroots level, persuade everyone from door to door. This is the reason why you should vote for me. Now, in order to explain the 3 points that I said earlier, I would like my partner to come out and, buttress more on the points being given. Thank you.
Alright, I'll just take over from where SlimT stopped, and I'll just try to get a bit intellectual about it. In terms of the first thing we talked about, which is very critical, when we talk about politics, what is the most important factor? Anybody tries to there? What is the most important factor when it comes to politics? Politics. The electorate, one. The people, gender, winning, election. Okay, so there's going to be a mammoth of answers, apparently. But people sometimes say that the most important thing in election or politics is the candidates. Is that true? Not really. Not really. Anybody can win an election.
Are you sure?
Anybody can win an election. The reason being that anybody can win an election if you get these three things right. If you target your voters correctly, if you are also able to get the right message, and eventually if you have an accurate plan that you follow through. What is targeting about? The first thing that sometimes we make mistakes. I've been opportune to have worked on developing some political campaigns. And one thing sometimes we usually just take the art of marketing, regular conventional marketing, and we want to just place it over politics or political marketing. It's a different ball game. Political marketing is as much a science as it is an art. It's as much a science. Yes, it's a science because it involves number crunching, but it's not very precise because there are elements of humanity. So there are people can change, people can do anything and then change in the last minute. So there is an art to it. The first thing in any political campaign, we believe from our end, is the first part which involves setting the goals. Setting the goals. What does this entail? Define why people that are supposed to vote. The last election, there were a certain number of people that vote. Yes, everybody gets on Facebook and Twitter and writes a lot of things. But you'll be surprised that these people don't vote. They don't eventually get to the town and vote. So should you direct your message towards these people? Maybe not. So you need to understand how many people vote eventually. There's a population of 170 million people, but how many people are eligible to vote? How many people vote? How many people even intend to vote to start with? Yes, 1 million people are registered, but eventually, historically in Nigeria, we've not gone past the 60% turnout vote ratio. That is the number of people that are registered and the number of people that eventually vote. So it means that 60% or 6 in 10 people who register to vote will eventually only vote. So 4 people out of those 10 won't vote. So you need to understand the turnout ratio. You need to understand also the historical antecedents. What are the number of votes that win an election? There is a number of votes that win an election in Nigeria. How do we then get this number of votes? The critical interplay of these elements is what defines or what analyzes setting up of the goal. The second phase of this is also defining the targets. The first is defining the geographical targets or the geographic targets. And this is where we'll come to something very recent, which is the Ekiti election. We know that this is something very cool, very, very recent, very hot. So we'll get into the nitty of this later on. But of all the local governments, the only person who was able to solve something or get something critical of all the political players in APC in Ekiti was probably the governor and maybe one other person that got something out of his polling booth or his ward. This also turns the conventional belief that if someone comes from a geography, he should naturally be voted for. So in defining your target, you need to understand the geography of this person. This person lives in this place. There is a greater chance that people will vote for this person if he is the only candidate coming from that region. This person schooled around this area. There is a greater chance people will vote for this person based on conventions. This person's wife owns a business or owns something around this place. There is a greater chance. Define all this. The second is the demographic, and this is where the Obama example comes into place. Understanding the demographic, knowing that a 40-year-old man or a 35-year-old man running for gubernatorial election might not appeal to my 77-year-old grandfather, for instance, because what their needs or what they demand of life are different. My grandfather is probably looking for someone who can guarantee that government will continue to pay pension, while the 35-year-old guy is only probably very interested in creating more employment opportunities. So understanding the demographic that someone of a particular age who owns a business, who is married, who's got kids, will probably appeal to people of similar demographics, people who are married, people who have got businesses, small businesses, who have got 2 kids, but will not appeal to people of maybe an older band or at least of a younger band if it is the converse. So understanding the demographics is also very key. But the most important thing is also understanding how these two interplay. How does the geographic and the demographic align? It's also important that this only happens when that candidate is the most important, is the only candidate that is running in the election. So if there were 2 candidates running from the same local government, how do you distinguish? If there were two candidates who have the same demographic, how do you distinguish? This element also makes it very interesting that, okay, so how then do you distinguish, which comes to the other part. The third element is, what are the values of the voters? What are the values of the target audience? Are these people so concerned about change, or all they want is stability? Yes, we sometimes want to develop economic campaigns and we say economic, I would transform economy. But how does economic transformation relate to Yasikira at Okeanri market? That's not what she understands. She understands something else. So it's key to understand that these people have different values. What motivates them? Do they even trust the government to start with? Are they pessimistic? Are they optimistic? If you are running an optimism-based campaign, I don't know, there was this picture that was going around Oshodi in 2025. I don't know how many of us saw that picture. That looked like Tokyo, or it looked like Grand Square. And it was going around. Do you want to run a campaign where people cannot even relate? Because people are already saying, you know what, this country is not going to get better. So every time there's an election, what is in it for us? What is in it for me? What kind of campaign do you want to run? The last thing about understanding them also is to understand what drives them, what motivates these people. Interestingly, I think SlimT will be sharing that, is a recent poll that was released by NY about the mix of, or the interplay of the Nigerian demographic or the Nigerian electorate. Why that? Yes, we've seen rise, or we've seen a new horizon, but there is a new understanding. People are ready to accept gifts, even if it doesn't interplay, or even if it doesn't influence their electoral decisions, but they are ready to receive gifts. At this point, I'll just draw something very interesting, which I think is a tool that every political campaign can be using in terms of developing it. It's just a table. It's a very simple table. Don't mind the proportions. I'll define this place as supporter and this place as voter. This is where the understanding of the Facebook and the Twitter dynamic comes in. People support you, people love you, they support you, but they will never get their acts right on the day of election to get out and vote. They will not endure the sun. They will not be able to endure the sun. So, in understanding this, we need to understand that there are supporters which are likely supporters, people who already love you. There are potential supporters, and there are non-supporters. These are the people of opposing parties, for instance. People who would never, and a PDP card carrying member can never vote for APC. So why send your message to that person, for instance? The other part is the voter. So you have the likely voter, you have the potential voter, and you have the non-voter. Now, the key thing to understanding this table is if you can define critically where there is a mix. So this guy is a likely supporter, he's a likely voter. What do you do to this kind of person? We define this mix as A, audience A. This person is a potential supporter, is a likely voter. We define him as B. This person is a non-supporter, but we vote. Define him as C. And then let's just quickly, because of time, I'll just quickly define these key elements. G-H-I. In terms of understanding how to skew your message, what do you do to someone who is a likely supporter and a likely voter? What do you do? Anybody? You focus your efforts. Maybe not. The reason being that this is where campaigns sometimes miss it, and this is where I'll draw the Obama and McCain example. Republicans will vote for Republicans even if they present a donkey to run for the office. So most of the campaign of McCain, for instance, was skewed largely towards Republicans who were going to vote for him. Obama understood the converse. He said, okay, you know what, Democrats will vote for Democrats, but if we use these numbers, number crunch it as of today, I will lose. So what he did was to focus on a new set of people who liked him, but who were not going to vote. They already believed that there was someone who was going to win the election, but they liked him. For these people who are likely voters and who are likely supporters, you only solidify your base. This is where party dynamics comes in. You only solidify your base. You show up at party meetings or irregularly. You make your presence very well felt. For potential supporters and their likely voters, what do you need to do? these are the people that you then start to focus your message. You need to persuade them to believe in you, because they are potential supporters. They will need something to hold on to believe in you. They don't believe in you yet, but they need something to hold on. You need to persuade them. This is where your persuasive message comes in. These people, what do you do to them? They are non-supporters, but they will vote.
Okay. Alright. This is the part where it gets fun. They will vote, but interestingly, one thing that came out from the Ekiti campaign, I've read a couple of things that came out, is that the fact that they tried to stop some people who were key blocks of the opposition, they tried to stop them. What you do in this kind of case is you try to stop them from voting. You try to stop them from voting. Okay. The next best set of people, they are likely supporters, they are potential voters. What do you do to them? The message here is that what? They support you, but they might not go and vote. The message here, this is where your get out the vote comes in. You need to give them the reason to go and vote. They already believe in you. In the process, they don't believe in. They don't see why they should vote. So you need to convince them to vote. These people are potential supporters. They are potential voters. What do? You try to focus your message on them. Yes, this is your second priority area for communication. Second priority, but not as important as this category. The last category, non-supporters, potential voter, same thing. Stop them. Anything you can use to stop them, stop them. They are not voters, but they are likely supporters. Non-voters mean they don't believe in the process. Yes, particularly campaigns need to understand that they have finite resources, time, money, people, very finite. So these people should be your last focus area. Yes. Sometimes campaigns they should be your last focus. Yes, there have been campaigns who have skewed this process. But I noticed that they should not focus on them, but they should be your last focus. Obama, for instance, made this a very great focus. They were non-voters, but he made them a very great focus. But for real campaigns, that Obama, for instance, also understood that he knew that he had a lot of money, so he tried to crowdfund or crowdsource for funds. The next category, they are potential supporters, they are non-voters. Maybe, it depends on you. If you've got a large pocket, maybe not, but the most advice, just ignore them. Ignore. The reason being that if you understand the mix of this and you understand the numbers that make up this, you can then say, okay, you know what? All these people, this solidified base, this get out the votes, this persuasive message, these 4 categories or these 4 blocks of people, they will not exactly give me the total number of votes I need. Okay, so how do I meet? I go to my last focus, I go to my maybe not, but I can never get anything out of these people, no matter how much I try, because they don't support me. So, not stop them. It's very critical that if campaigns can understand this, it will help them to manage resources. Sometimes, where there are many interesting campaigns, politics is a very emotional thing, or voting is a very emotional thing. People usually get it on, like us said, on an intimate level. Campaigns understand that their pockets are not deep. They're able to use these templates perfectly in maximizing their resources they have. The second critical thing is the persuasive message. And this is where we sometimes get it very interesting, because we put on the marketing ads, for instance. We want to we say, what's the avant-garde thing to do? What's the most important thing to the electorate? Anybody? What's the most important thing to the electorate? Rice. Rice. Praise God. Praise God. Rice is important. It's a global phenomenon. It might be rice in Ekiti. It might be amala or elubo in Osun. It might be my institution fee in America. But it's a universal thing. It's a universal thing. What else is important to the electorate? Okay, there are 2 critical things in developing persuasive messages. The first thing is to understand that your electoral message comes last on the list of the electorate. Our candidate, it comes last. What they are thinking about, their husband, their wife, their girlfriend, their children who have not eaten. They have many other priorities. So your electoral message is usually the last on the list. If there was going to be, so even if there was going to be an election tomorrow, as of today, what he's thinking about is, my children have not eaten. My husband is still looking for a job. Those are the key things. So the messages he's going to listen to or the information he's going to get will be skewed along the line. The second most important thing is that these people have sources of information. Women, for instance, their most believable source of information might be gossip gatherings. Men, for instance, might be newspaper stands. Women, it might be when they go and pick up their children or do PTA meeting. Understanding that the messages need to be skewed along these lines of information is very critical or very key for developing political campaigns. So you've got Sadiq, who's got Munai as a child already. The messaging you develop for Sadiq is different from me, even though Sadiq believes that we have the same age band, or the same generational band. It needs to be skewed along those lines of priority. So your messaging, does it address this person's needs or this person's husband, or this person's wife, or this person's children? Does your messaging address how well these children are doing in school? Does the messaging develop all those other things? I'll quickly just drop a template also. This is a template that I also think that is very critical for campaigns to also use. And this template is a very simple template. It's a template of developing an identity for your candidates. So it's very critical that campaigns are also able to inflect on the candidates or the party or the whatever dynamics play up in that sphere. So this first part is what do we say about ourselves? You know, one critical thing that makes political campaigns also not well aligned is the fact that the people that surround them often tell them that, oh, they are the Messiah, right? You are doing good. Your English is very well. Your presentations are very good. You are going to come in. But it's very critical that campaigns are able to say, what do we say about ourselves? Yes, we have the best technocrat team. But what does that translate to in terms of the electorate? The next is, what do we say about them? Them is made up of what do we say about them? If I was going to use this example, for instance, in the recent elections, we'll say, oh, that man is a tout. He's a fence climber at the airport. He climbs stairs at the airport. He abuses people. He does everything. But what do we say about them? Then what do they say about us? What does opposition say about us? What do they say about us? And then the last one is, what do they say about themselves? Okay, so I'll just without writing notes. What you want to do is to play up the rhetoric of what you say about yourself as much as possible, and play up the rhetoric and play down what they say about themselves. Sorry. Yes, they say they are good, but you need to start emphasizing, create scenarios to show that what they say about themselves is not accurate. The last part in terms of developing persuasive messaging is in issues creation. This is a very critical thing, and I think that in this climb, yes, it's a developing trend, but I think that in this climb, we're not very focused about it. And I'll just quickly just draw up a list. So the issues, there are different issues. In Lagos, for instance, maybe rights will not work in Lagos because we probably have economic activities. Maybe tuition fee raise would not affect the chances of APC coming back because there are economic activities in Lagos that can almost balance that out. But why do that in Ekiti? In Ekiti, maybe what is important to them is you raise tuition fee. Maybe what is important to them is, for instance, in Ekiti, the largest employer of labor is government. Yes, it plays out in all demographics. But the closest second is a distant second, very distant. So it means that if you tamper with that sector, you're tampering with the critical mass of your electorate. So I'll just quickly run through. I'll just say issues, priority, and in candidate perception. I'll just use 5 issues. So issue A, B, C, D, E. Yes, these are the 5 issues. In terms of the priority to the electorate, issue C is the most important. So I'll use 5. Issue B is probably the second most important. C is the third, and sorry, have I missed something? Okay, sorry. And so you have 2, 4, 5, 3, 1. But because the people need to understand, people only vote.
Sorry, is most equipped. I'll just because of time, I'm trying to manage time. But this just basically shows 5 being the highest in terms of is most equipped. We see that He is most equipped here, but is the least equipped in terms of what the electorate wants. Now, sometimes electoral campaigns or political campaigns often run on the fact that you want to play up the narrative of the strength of the candidate. But if that issue that you are playing up is not important to the electorate, it's as good as you are playing, you should have used that money to buy rice and give to people. I don't know if I made sense there. So if campaigns can develop this template, and then you are able to draw up a matrix and say, okay, there is an issue and there is a perception. There is an issue and there is, sorry, I studied engineering, so you can understand you can forgive all my graphing. So there are 10 issues, or let's say there are 8 issues, so 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And there are 8 perceptions, definitely there will be 8 perceptions. Okay, so this candidate, the issue that is most important is issue 8 to this candidate, but the candidate is probably number 3 in terms of the way they perceive him, that's not what he can deal with the most. You've got it here, so you say issue C. I just used a few issues. The candidate has a great perception in terms of issue G, but is also number 6 on the priority of the people, right? So it's strongest on issue 8, but is the highest priority for the people. So let's say issue D. I'll draw it here. The rhetoric, or the most important thing of drawing this graph, is that as much as you want to develop persuasive messaging, the focus of the persuasive messages should be on any issue that falls within this block. Any issue that doesn't fall within this block, spend a great amount of time killing it in terms of not making it well known. Yes, his list is not very well equipped to play it. The reason why it is very important is that by the time you begin to play off those narratives of the issues, you create an avenue for opponents to also play their strength. So they say, yes, you are saying this issue is important to the electorate, but you are not the strongest. So you've also given an opportunity for opposition to play up or to accentuate that issue. The last category, which is the last part of developing political campaigns, and this is from nuggets we've seen, is the issue of planning. And more often than not, he said something, there are 3 types of campaigns that are doomed to fail. The first one is the one that has an idea of, he has a persuasive message, they've got good candidates, they don't understand their voters, they don't know their voters, so they're just going whichever way. This campaign is doing this, we'll jump onto this campaign. The second category of the campaign that will fail is one, they understand their voters, they have their persuasive messaging, but they don't understand how they'll get there, they don't have a plan, no clear plan. It's also doomed to fail. The third category is one that has a clear plan, understands the voters, has a persuasive message, but doesn't follow through the plan. And this is where we draw the curtain, which I would share as an example of something that has recently happened. And this is my perception. Please don't hold it against me. Which are my perceptions of why I think Fayemi lost Ekiti, not why Fayose won. And the first one, which I would say, is in terms of planning, but I will also go back and make it the last. The first critical thing, which I think was one reason why he lost, was not understanding the voters. They didn't understand the voters. There had been a lot of play that had come up, but one critical element was that they had identified that this man was a quote-unquote snob. Snob not in the sense of snob, but not being a man of the people. Politicians also need to understand that everybody, particularly in this climb of the world, populism still wins, not track record. Everybody loves man of people. Even not in this climb of the world, it's a universal trend. There was something I read and they say Bill Clinton spends at least, he makes sure that he's going for a town hall meeting, he gets down 45 minutes and makes a 45 minutes walk within that town hall, greeting everybody, hi, hi, hi. And before he gets to the eventual place where we'll give the speech. Arebe Shala also does the same. Walks amongst pedestrians, does all that. There was something interesting that someone said. He says, even when Fayemi was going to go and vote, his car was wound up. And then, yes, I know it's part of the electoral rules that you don't campaign. But we've seen that opposition, they did the reverse. They used open jeeps, and they also hey, people were hailing, this guy's going to go and vote. Yes, it's not a campaign, but in this part of the world. That's one critical thing that I perceive. The second thing was not understanding the voters. Having developed these templates, I believe that for new candidates, they should undertake this task every year so that you don't tamper with a critical mass of your electorate or the people that deliver your votes. The critical mass of Ekiti votes. Yes, we can say rice won Ekiti, but that's not true. I defer to that statement. Yes, but rice as a metaphor for what won Ekiti is true. What won Ekiti was the fact that it tampered with an electorate called civil service and the teachers. The teachers bloc felt that this needs thing was going to tamper with their livelihood, and they revolted. So he didn't understand the voters, and his messaging was not skewed along that line. The third thing was the SMS thing, which the opposition latched on very accurately. Very accurately was the use of SMS. Someone from even the APC camp admitted that he got a flood of messages talking about what Fayemi will sack you teachers if he comes back. Fayemi will ban you Okadas if he comes back. Fayemi would do a lot of things if he comes back. So people understood critically. There was a flood of messages, SMSs in that climb, not unlike the opposition that spent a great amount of money, bloggers, tweeters, which people don't read in that climb. So it's very critical that I for one think that was one. The other one is the fact that he was not a local person. All politics is local. And I don't think he had a political structure. This is me thinking. We might disagree across this board, but this is me thinking. If all the critical people within your power cannot win their votes, then it shows a deficiency in the political structure. Unlike this other person, even in Ado Ekiti, for instance, which accounts for 20% of the voting population of that state. 40% of the voting population of that state. They still didn't get anything. Meanwhile, that was the focus of effort of the governor. And they voted for someone who had abused the king of Ado, or whatever. The Ewi of Ado. They had abused this Ewi of Ado, but people still rallied behind him. Many people can give their reasons. They can say he played up the rhetoric of the man of the people. He also came up with the fact that I am a prodigal son. Forgive me. And you know we can be emotional in this climb. Forgive me. The last thing is this tactic of the PDP. I think they got that spot on. Whether I would like it or not, the critical driver, which an NOI poll that was recently released confirmed, is the critical driver for getting out the votes in this climb is cash, money. It's a critical driver. And what was the strategy of the opposition? Be the only ones available to get out the votes. Yes, you might say it's not rigging, but availability of our Minister of Defense, of who is the other person, of one former person, I won't mention names at this point, of one former person, and there were three of them. They were doling out cash. They had a stronghold, and what they did was lock down the state and prevent it. So which comes back to the element of the planning. In developing planning, particularly going forward, we also need to understand the landscape. Opposition would, particularly for incumbents who have federal power, the planning should reflect that there should be as much. That's why I think that they would not lose Osun State, for instance. Because I think 2 weeks before they can lock down that state, the key players will already be in the state with all the money that they require to dole out. That's my thinking. So it's critical that when you are developing plans should be developed from the election day backwards. This is what we will do. The person will go to this meeting. The person will attend this function. The person would be at these functions. It's very critical that political campaigns understand that. I think I'll hand over to SlimT at this point because I think we're out of time to just round off share some insights based on the demographics and some insights from what you've seen from a recent poll. Okay, now according to demographics, I would just like to practicalize this a little bit because this session feels more or less like a seesaw. There's a lot coming from here, and it's also imperative that we also have something coming from here. So I'd like to just throw out one or two questions. So I'd like to ask you a question, Mr. Aziz. Could you please stand up? So for example, if you're supposed... No, sorry, it's because I know he's a very political person and this will be very interesting. So, for you to cast your vote to a likely presidential candidate, what would be your requirements for you to now say, okay, well, this person has fulfilled A, B, C, and D, is most likely the person I'll cast my vote for?
Thank you, that was a very critical question. That was a very critical question. I want to thank Mr. Damilare for his incisive in-depth analysis of the issue. But coming to your question, if I get you right, you're asking me if I'm going to cast my vote for a particular presidential candidate, what would be my criteria for doing that? Okay. Before I answer your question, there's a perception. You understand what I'm trying to say? In Africa, we have one thing. We are sentimental. If you can be sentimental, you can win the heart of the people. Jonathan came with his own slogan of "I have no shoes, I have no what's it called, bags going to school." Yeah, so I have no sandals. They voted for him based on that. But me being a political analyst, a commentator, yes, being a political analyst and having the in-depth knowledge of what it takes, you understand, to be a leader, because in my school I was once a departmental president, and I know how I won over the electorate. That's the student of political science of ABC Onabanjo University. Prior to the election, nobody knew me. I just did something. I capitalized on the weakness of my opponent. By doing what? By bringing all my grammatical prowess into action. So I know all these tricks. How to get the people. At the end of the day, I was not the ideal candidate. At the end of the day, because I had my own. Yes, no, I'll be practical about it. I had my own inadequacies. You understand? That got exposed afterwards. After I became the president.
Going back to the first chat, the very first one. Okay, in a case where you have likely supporters and likely voters, I'll say that's probably someone like me. And for me if you're going to be focusing on me to have my vote, it means I must have been registered, because registration means you are eligible to vote, and I must have been 18. And I have not registered. So at that point, what do you do? Is there anything that makes provision for maybe political parties? I know APC did it recently. They can ask for people to register well ahead of time. If I'm going to be an electorate, how do I indirectly influence people to register, so that at the end of the day, if I have to target my communication messages to them, I'm sure that at least they'll be coming out to vote. Because yes, you can convince me, and you'll not be able to vote at the end of the day.
All right. I think we can take the second question, so we can answer one question at a time. Well, from this same chat, you said voters and supporters, you have a likely voter, potential voter, and non-voter. And taking, for example, the scenario in Nigeria now, we have APC handling almost, if not up to 15, or let's say 12 or 11 states. And you know, these states are having one of the largest population when it comes to, okay, vote here, vote here. When you count Lagos, you pick Kano, that is in the opposition. And you look at the population of Nigeria based on this, and you are saying somebody should, in this part of the country where we have the incumbent, take for example the PDP now, and you know the opposition is having the states that are having the largest population. How do you stop them? It's a very critical issue, because now they have all that they can use to block anybody. Take for example the queue in Ekiti, or Shiomole was blocked somewhere, or Amici was blocked somewhere, and I know it's because they are prominent. That is why they show that one. Others have been blocked. So how do somebody like me, appointed as a political campaigner for Atiku, maybe in Ekiti, how will I succeed if federal minds are used to stop me, and I need to stop them? Praise God.
Good graphic. Mine is not a question, it's a comment that before we start saying everything we need to say as individuals,
we ourselves need to also be registered somewhere if we want a change. I was looking at this thing, likely supporter and likely voter, and somebody was just telling me yesterday how he had to travel to Ekiti to make sure that Fayemi is voted for. And he now said he was calling Femi Falana to come. And you can imagine somebody like Femi Falana is a likely supporter and a likely voter. You will expect that on that day he will vote. But on that day he didn't vote. So he wasn't there. But immediately the results started coming, those are the set of people that will start talking, analyzing and everything, just the way we do. So we shouldn't just take this for granted. It's also a statement for us to make sure that we find a place within this graph that we actually belong to. Assess ourselves by using this graph, supporter and voter graph, and then we know where we are. Thank you.
Well done at the presentation. There's been a lot of hit, haga, and can't come. Okay, straight to the question. My concern really is with the last part of the matrix you have there. The non-voters. My concern is, so, what if they form the larger percentage of the voters? You know, because you should also have, I'm thinking, should there be a strategy to appeal to the non-voters? Because, I mean, there should be a way to balance it out, basically. So I don't know if you have a suggestion to a strategy or creating a message that will appeal to the non-voters. Thank you.
What I think is about philosophy. In Africa, we have rulers and we have their subjects. That's the way it works. Whether we like it or not, that's emotional. I don't look at it as a strategy. I think he just did what people have been doing, but he extended it. Then if we're going to come to the level of philosophy, which is in America you have the Democrats and you have the Republicans, which means, like you said earlier, the Republican will not vote for the Democrat. But it's not going to happen because there is a set state of mind, there is a philosophy behind it. What I think is that if we're going to pursue people like us coming out to vote in the future, we need to start at a level, say about 4, 5, 6 years. Which means you go to campuses, you go to universities, you start imbibing the culture of philosophy into students. Anybody who's above 18 should have a mindset that this is what I believe in, and this is what I don't believe in. This party preaches this, I don't believe in this. This party preaches, I don't believe in this.
To attempt to answer Tosin's question, it's critical to understand that, like what Bright said, a PDP card-carrying member will not vote for APC. Most likely, except maybe our allied comrade who says he will still vote for Atiku. It's very important that candidates also can play this out. I give you an instance. If CFIH form a critical mass of the electorate, or a larger mass of the electorate, then the candidate is probably not in a party that can drive that kind of goodwill, for instance. It's probably not in a party. The second critical thing is, if these people, which is where we see what Obama did, people say online won Obama. Yeah, we can say that, but that's not the critical mass of what won Obama. We later learned the critical mass of what won Obama was his ability to organize small sessions in universities and be able to meet up with very young people and say, you know what, this is my vision. And these young people, yes, we can call them volunteers, yes, we can call them supporters, but these young people became ambassadors for change on their different institutions. You know, the people who started this concept used to be, I can't remember the name of the brand. They used to run it a long time ago where you had ambassadors for that brand on all campuses in America. And that was that same concept he used. You know what, if this person is closer to you, if you can get 20 votes in Kansas University, for instance, those 20 votes will translate into something, but Obama doesn't have to go to it. But I've met Dishola, who has a critical influence over 20 of those votes. So, which is what I think the strategy APC came up with, which was what, if this critical mass is not enough to deliver out the votes, what do we need to do? We need to bring up enough people on board to this critical mass. So you do what? You create a get involved in the political process kind of campaign. get involved. Your votes count. We are not saying join APC or join PDP, but get involved. Get a critical mass of people to be registered, and then you can then use what are they calling, populate this table. Ultimately, which is this critical thing, and which comes back to the developing of your targets, or understanding your targets. Sometimes, or more often than not, you have people who will also be fighting for this same space. For instance, in election, I think it was which one, I can't remember. But sometimes you will have more than one good candidate that you would like to support, right? You would have more than one. So what eventually sways you? So even within these likely supporters or these likely voters, there's still a subset of people that, yes, they're still a likely supporters, but they still like another person. So how do you canvass those people to come over to your side? The key answer is there is no solve-it-all answer. But the key is to understand. If you can understand your targets, understand what works for them, there is no candidate that cannot be elected, like we said from the beginning. Praise the Lord.